Today I'm having a conversation with my friend Alexander Quinn. Alexander and I haven't talked for, I don't know, probably been about 3 months maybe. So let's see what Spirit brings through on behalf of all of you who are watching. Alexander and I always have really interesting conversations. And before I bring him on, I want to thank all of you for being here, for listening, for participating, and playing the vital role that's necessary for all of us to play in order to create this new reality that we're in the process of creating. So I appreciate all of you and who you are being and what you are doing in this new world. I also want to suggest that you might want to jump on over to my website and participate in the 6D Money Tree program. It's all about learning how to grow your prosperity in the etheric field. And I created this program so that the whole of humanity can raise its vibration about prosperity. And when enough of us do, that will actually open the floodgates for humanity to receive on a much bigger level. It actually will help flip the script so that the money flows to the masses rather than just the few at the top that it currently flows to. So this is a program that Spirit had me to create to help people work through any fear-based beliefs they might have around money, to work through their blocks about money, and then how to create money trees in the etheric field, in the quantum field, because money really does grow on trees. So you can hop over to my website and follow the links for that. And then if you're having issues with any part of your life, if you have triggers that you feel are unresolved and shadow work that's unresolved, I can help you with that too, either in one-on-one counseling sessions or through my transcendence process. And the next transcendence process class starts in September. So there are a couple of spots left for that. I keep those classes small intentionally so that we can have a small intimate group to learn from each other. And there are only a couple of spots left. So you might want to jump over to my website at victoriareynolds.com and check those out as well, along with the other goodies that I have there. And if you haven't yet, be sure to pick up a free copy of my book, Rise Up. It's all about what's happening on the planet right now. And there's a whole chapter dedicated to a glossary of terms that a lot of people are finding very helpful. So I'm going to bring Alexander on and we'll go from there. Good morning or good evening, Alexander. It's so good to see you. How are you?
Hello, it's fantastic to see you as well. How are you doing?
Good. Good. So I spent the summer with my son, which has been really fun reconnecting with him. You and I haven't talked for a couple of months, but if you recall, last winter, my kids wanted nothing to do with me because we were on opposite ends of the political spectrum.
Yes.
And my son, he's not coming around, but he's not a pain in the butt to deal with. Let's put it that way. So I spent the summer with him, and he's really frustrated with his sister because she insists on being, every conversation has to be something that's somehow politically motivated by whatever it is that she's reading on TikTok and Twitter. Those are her, and a couple of other places, but that's where the kids hang out, right?
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how she and I have conversations, and I just listen. I'm not going to argue with her because there's nothing I can say that's going to change her mind.
Yeah, I mean that's very 3D, 4D stuff. Focusing on all the on all the political stuff. It's one is still allowing too much of one's external world to govern one's internal and not the other way around. Yeah, I've done away with most of that. So when people are having these big, I try to, the political thing, all the rest of it, I just stay out of it. When you get to this is going to sound really corny and egotistical, but when you get to a certain vibration that's high enough and you can basically just quit drinking completely, you have no nicotine in your diet, no caffeine, just living on vegetables, you don't bother watching the news, you start living in a reality, you've got nothing slowing you down, you're in touch with your higher self, your intuition is like ticking over like a Rolex, like a Swiss watch. on time. It's like you're living in a completely parallel reality that doesn't exist outside of the world that everyone else sees. I mean, I live in a reality that a lot of people probably wouldn't. I mean, my consciousness is just somewhere else. So when people are getting worried and worked up about politics and all this kind of stuff, it's I mean, that's partly why it's so important. As I keep saying over and over and over again, people got to do their shadow work so they're not getting the triggers, because triggers are your subconscious and your ego controlling what's happening through your external world and governing your internal. That's why I keep saying to people, if you're just doing love and light all the time, you're spiritual bypassing, and you're not doing what you came down here to do, which is do your spiritual work, heal the traumas, heal the ancestral connections and all the rest of it, and break the cycles in this lifetime, which is what you came here to do. So a lot of people who are still getting too caught up in politics and that and everything else, they're still focusing on too much of the external and not enough of the internal, and not wanting to be here and saying, oh, I'm 5D, and then saying I don't like the world I live in and all this kind of stuff, all these contradictions and everything else. Whereas I wake up at 9 o'clock, I'll go and have like a honey and yogurt breakfast, and I'll walk for 3 miles, and I'll come back and I'll do a whole lot of work. And then like for dinner tonight, I'm just having broccoli and mashed potato. And I have no nicotine, no caffeine, no alcohol. I mean, I'm living in a totally different reality, and I can feel it when I'm grounding and everything. So all the people, I almost am at a point now where I don't even understand people who are caught up in politics anymore. It's like a world that I've completely catapulted out of. It's like the old 3D. As your vibration goes up and up and up and up, I've been saying this for a long time, the 3D world and the 5D world, you'll just carry on going like this and this. But you yourself, not only will those two worlds become more separated, but you yourself will become more separated from that world until it's almost unrecognizable. And I was thinking that today in the kitchen when I was literally practically floating on air. And I was just thinking, I don't even recognize my old self. Like my old self is like a stranger to me, and the people that I used to know and the things that people get worried about. That really is about, the higher your consciousness goes up, the less triggers you have, the less worries. The ego is not in control. It's all about your internal governing the external and not the other way around and all the rest of it. So anyone getting too caught up in all these old 3D paradigms is still in lower fourth.
Right.
So it's that's what they want: conquer and divide, control, break all the groups up, get them arguing. There's very clever social engineering going on at this moment in time. Everyone who has that is the good guys. Everyone who doesn't have that are the bad guys. Get them to fight it out. Mm-hmm. So the control and conquer and divide narrative is higher than it's ever been. And that's what their game is: to break up families, to get groups fighting. Black Lives Matter. You either like it or you hate it. There's no middle ground. Trump, Biden, let's all battle it out. Everyone fighting everyone. If you do love being on Gaia and you're not part of that, then you really are having real pockets of 5D. I don't know anyone that is in pure 5D all the time, because I don't know anyone who's like a Palladian or an Andromedan on Earth at this moment in time. I think there's people who say that they're in 5D all the time. I think there's probably very few people who are. There'll be some like Buddhist monks and people in some temples, but there will be more and more people getting huge pockets of 5D in their day for sure. So when I hear your was it your daughter who was talking about it?
Oh, so. Well, it's interesting because it's a whole lot of people who think my daughter doesn't even know the word 5D exists, but there are a lot of people who, like you were saying, who think they're in 5D, but they're still all caught up in the drama of the duality reality that's playing out right now. In my daughter's case, she's one of those kids that's gotten caught up in the other narrative. And so I just listen. I'm not going to argue with her. It's kind of interesting listening to her because I'm getting that perspective. That if I were one of those people that would just argue with her and tell her that she's wrong, I wouldn't be able to get that other perspective. She would just stop talking to me. And so I just listen to what the present narrative is that's going on. And it's so funny because I was talking to her yesterday and I said something about how young children are not the ones who are getting the virus, right? And she said, where are you getting that from? I'm like, oh my gosh, where is she getting that that's not? Yeah. Is she being told that little kids are getting it just as much as everybody else? So I was shocked to hear her say that. And I was like, well, everybody knows that. Like, how could you not know that? I didn't say that to her, but that's what I was just thinking that. Yeah. How could you not? Like, is someone else in TikTok or Twitter saying the opposite? Because it's all about keeping people afraid, ultimately.
Yeah.
So that's just been really interesting navigating that. And my son's not wanting to spend as much time around his sister, even though they're really good friends, because all she wants to do is create conflict. She actually kind of gets a bit of an ego trip out of creating conflict. So, and I just won't go there with her. But it's driving my son crazy because he's like, Mom, it's just so much more peaceful when she's not around because she's always on.
Let me ask you a question about something recently. How did you get through the Lion's Gate? How did you find it?
This year I was fine with it. Last year it changed my life.
Really?
Last year during the Lion's Gate is when I separated from my husband.
Yeah.
And so this year I was asking, is there anything else I need to let go of? And I wasn't getting, because usually there's a purge that goes with it.
Yeah.
But I discovered that in the same time in 2018 is when I told my husband the first time, I can't do this anymore. And I didn't really put that together until last year, was same time of year when I finally just said, you know what, I'm done. He just vibrationally, I couldn't be in his space anymore.
Yeah. When I'm doing readings for people, that's coming up more and more and more, and it's going to get worse. So I was saying
the separation of realities, right?
Yeah.
So I was explaining to my audience, and I think my last video, how we're basically creating two different realities on the same planet.
Yeah.
And we get to choose which of those two realities we're going to exist in. And they're separating. And my understanding is that by 2023, you've made your choice.
Oh, I think a lot of people made that choice already. I mean, I'm
there are a lot of people who still don't. There are some people who are partially awake. Do you know what I mean? So there are some people who are partially awake who think they've made that choice, but they haven't had their full. So there's some people who are spiritually awake, and there are some people who are aware of the division, and there are some people who are both. But there are a lot of people who are spiritually awake and yet unaware. Like yes. They're very beautiful spiritual people. Their minds have been taken over by the narrative. Who are aware of the narrative but are not spiritually awake. They are
I've got a term for that.
In their religiosity.
I've got a term for that. It's the best way I can describe it. It's being in a delusion of an illusion. So that they've come out, they're still in an illusion, but in a delusion as well at the same time. So it's like they've come out of 3D and they want to go into 4D. So they've come out of one illusion, but into another delusion.
Right.
This is why I keep saying, to people, if you're permanent love and light all the time, this is the best way to describe it. You've got to have love and light. You've got to shine your light, and you've got to practice your light. And your light is like a muscle. The more you practice it, the stronger it gets. But it's a bit like wanting to buy a Lamborghini and not putting any hard work to get it, so that when you get there, you don't even feel like it's yours. You can't claim it. You can't own it, and it can be taken away from you. So when you get a lot of light workers who haven't broken a lot of patterns and healed their ancestry and all that kind of stuff, they get triggered very, very easily because they haven't found light in their own dark and gone back into their traumas, both in this life and lifetime. That's where you get a foundation, a rock, which you can sit on top of. That's where you don't get triggers, where you're like Jesus. Nothing can trigger you. Whereas with a lot of the people who are just pure love and light all the time, and they skip that part, they just bypassed it and went straight to love and light. There's no rock underneath them. So any trigger is like a rug, just whipping it out from underneath their feet. And that's why you get so many of these love and light people so triggered by absolutely anything going on. And they're all arguing in these starseed groups and everything, because they haven't got like a spiritual foundation. Yeah. They haven't done like both spiritually and unconsciously, bringing the unconscious into the conscious as well.
Right. So, but I know a lot of people who have spent years doing their shadow work and they got sucked into the narrative. They have no idea that they're sucked into it. That's how powerful it is.
It is.
And so I started saying a couple of years ago that when the light workers finish waking up, they will be an army to reckon with.
Oh, well, they already are. They already are becoming an army.
Shadow work. So when you talk about triggers, there's one thing I wanted to mention really quick. But people need to understand that when something triggers us, it's because there's something inside of us that's asking for our attention to be resolved.
100%.
So a lot of times people get triggered and they immediately go into blame. You triggered me. This triggered me. Instead of stopping and saying, wait a minute, what is it inside of me that's coming to the surface for me to acknowledge?
Absolutely.
Process. So it's part of the shadow work. Recognizing the triggers and learning how to process them is a part of the shadow work. And that's something that a lot of the newly awakening haven't even started doing their shadow work yet. No. So they're aware, they've had the light bulb turn on, but they haven't done processing their life yet. And they're not. There's this mass illusion with the newly awakening. All these people that have woken up since 2019, a huge awakening in 2020, that they're just going to pop from 3D to 5D, and you don't. You got to go through the 4D bridge, and well, it's more like it's a spiral, right? Spiral up into 5D, and at every step there is resolution that needs to be dealt with. You can't bypass it. You can pop into 5D consciousness every once in a while. You won't be able to stay there unless you've done your shadow work.
It's true, because you need a foundation. 100%. Very well, very, very eloquent and perfectly articulated. I couldn't say any better myself.
So you were primarily with the Arcturians, correct?
Yes. I mean, I have a very strong Regulus being inside me as well, which is built into my personality. And because of that, I end up meeting a lot of other Regulus beings. But I am not bringing messages through and getting downloads from Regulus. It is built into my personality. But I am getting messages from Arcturians and the Boots constellation, and it's a strange thing. Every time I think I understand how it works, I don't. Whenever I think it's going to happen, it doesn't, and and that's for one reason: ego, trying to control how and when it happens. And it always flows when I stop worrying about it, stop caring how it's going to work, when it's going to happen, when a message is going to come through. And that's when it's like a tap turning on, like the faucet, and the water just flows. And yes, I mean, I love them. I absolutely love them. And I had a very interesting experience with them once. I would have told the story many times before, but when I was first starting out on my journey, I was doing an Arcturian meditation, and my mentor said, print off a picture of the being you have behind you and put it on a printed bit of paper underneath your pillow, and go to sleep and do some binaural meditation, and just wait and see what happens. So I did that, and I had I wouldn't say an abduction experience, but I went into a very, very deep sleep very, very quickly, and I woke up about 20 minutes later on thinking 9 hours have passed. I woke up and I thought, well, I've got to get ready for work. But before I go to work, I've got to go and say goodbye to them. And I ran down to the flat. There was no one here. And it was like I had been visited, but I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember anything. It had been blocked. And the next morning, had an email from my mentor saying they picked you up on the ship. They took you on board. You know, that for your own protection, you know, you don't remember it. And it was crazy because I didn't tell my mentor about that. And so that's kind of how it all started. The only time I ever got a little bit, not annoyed with the Arcturians, but when everything in my flat kept blowing up after I'd had interactions with them, the light bulb blew up, the cooker blew up. Everything was blowing up. The kettle stopped. The TV stopped. So I kind of loved the interactions, but after a while, I was kind of getting a little bit tired of everything in the electronic in the flat blowing up or stopping working. And I was doing an interview recently with. I mean, they sometimes just come in so strong. It's like. It's like kind of having a spiritual orgasm sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I was doing an interview on cosmic awareness, something or other, and I was touching the sculpture behind me, and it was like having an orgasm, but a sort of spiritual orgasm. And I was almost came out completely out of my body, and I was. And she was laughing because she's a remote viewer, and she was like, "Oh, your sculptors set you off." And she was connecting with the Arcturians, and she was saying they've triggered you because there's something going on that half of you need to be up there. And I was really struggling to do this interview. I was having to not fight to get through it, but I wasn't here. And it's sometimes I see that when I'm talking to like Linda Good McGillis, who comes on my channel fairly often, and I'll be talking to her, and then she'll just suddenly start busting out light language, like like that all of a sudden. And I'm like, and I just have to pause, let her do it, because there's something she's communicating up there, and then she's back with you. So I don't get that happening to me, but I definitely get. It's like the only way I can describe it is like an orgasm, but it's more spiritual, which you feel less in your body and more in your soul when you connect. And the thing I love about when I connect to them is I am learning to love humanity more, and love the people on this earth. I didn't for a long time. I didn't like being on earth. I didn't want to be here, and I didn't like people on earth, and I didn't even like myself. But after all the work I did, I have polarized that now. And that makes it easier to connect to spirit and have these experiences and things, because you have to be more of a vibrational match for them to be able to connect with you, to get to you, for things to come through. So if you are hating being on Gaia, which many starseeds do, it is harder to connect to spirit and to get messages come through. So it takes time, but it can easily be done. So I love the Arcturians, but my first incantation was actually Lyran, feline Lyran. So I have this thread going through all my incantations. There is this feline Regulus lion thing, and I attract a lot of lions to me. I get on very, very well with people from the regular star system, and also anyone born in August. My top 3 people are Arcturians, Lyrans, and Leos. I just have an instant connection. I can always tell because I can feel it here, straight in the heart energy straight away. So yeah, the Arcturians are super cool. They're super unusual. They don't work on human time. You never know when they're going to show up. I never know when they're going to show up, and they're super interesting. And I sometimes look at my YouTube thing with the messages that I put up, and I sometimes sit there and I think I wonder when the next one will be. And people say, when will the next one be? And I say, I have no idea. I have no idea. It might not be for a very long time. But usually more often than not, it is they will wake me up in the middle of the night, or I won't be able to sleep, and then boom, it hits me, or when I'm in the shower. So it's usually when I'm in that theta brainwave kind of place, but I'm not thinking about it, and my stupid ego is not in the way.
Yeah, because that is a huge issue for a lot of, for lack of a better word, channelers, right? They'll get in and start to bring in this message, but ego gets in the way. So for me, when I bring in a message, I'm like, okay, I command my ego to be set aside, allow inspiration to come in, and I set very clear intentions that the ego does not interpret what comes through, and that it's just a pure line of communication, because otherwise the ego is going to try to get in there and interpret it its way and add its own spin. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we've seen, not just in conscious channels, but even when you go all the way back through the leaders of churches, and even back through like the Bible. If the intention isn't set clear and the ego isn't set aside, the ego is going to try to get in there and filter it in a way that serves the ego, and in a way that the ego understands. And as we know, when the ego is set aside, the message that comes in is pure. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I get words that I actually have to look up later because I don't even know what they mean. It's kind of a way where, because I work with the ascended masters, how they let me know, like they'll give me words I don't even know are a word, and then I have to do some research to find out what they're talking about. And
there's another element as well. It's whatever toxins, pesticides, preservatives, alcohol, whatever it also is in our system, also slows up our cognitive abilities to be able to process messages coming through as well. So we're blocked by our mental and physical body, which is often why, when we're taken on board the ship at night, they don't allow us to remember it, because we're full of I would say unawakened people are full of GMOs, recreational drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, ready-made meals. They've got carcinogens floating around their body because they're putting a microwave plastic dish in a microwave, cooking their food in the plastic dish and eating out of that. And all that stuff really messes up with your recall as well. So there's a lot to think about. You were 100% correct with the ego, but also whatever's floating around in our body is going to really slow the process down with the brain. We're going to have cognitive dissonance going on regards. And that's why they sometimes stop us remembering being on the ships, because we would recall it in a fearful way when it's actually not. So that's why a lot of our ETs don't just turn up at the front door and knock, because we're not ready for it. And everyone says, we're ready for disclosure, we're ready for them to turn up. But in my humble opinion, most people aren't, including half of the light workers. Because if an Arcturian actually knocked on your door and you opened the door and there was an Arcturian there, it would be such a reality shift. Your brain would freeze and you'd shut down, you'd go into fear, and they would feel that, and that would be a problem. And they don't, and so it would lower your vibration very, very quickly. So there's actually very few people who are ready for not only full disclosure, but full contact and that kind of stuff. So I just quickly, your necklace is lovely. What is that? Is that amethyst?
It is. Yeah, isn't that pretty?
Yeah, I couldn't help looking at that and thinking how beautiful that was. Yeah, so there's lots of little bits of amethyst.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I didn't try to string it. It did break at one point, and a friend restrung it for me. So it's like, how much do I owe you for that? Because I know it's not an easy. They're just teeny tiny, and they have little holes in each one of them. So
yeah, it's beautiful. I was actually I was just gazing at it for a while, thinking, what a beauty, because I love amethyst. I mean, it's great for sleeping, and psychic work, that one. And you've got a huge singing bowl behind you. I know I am digressing as well.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, and you're gonna love this. Speaking of amethyst.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Pretty.
That's really nice. Yeah, that's really, really nice.
And then I've got this one too.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like my bad boy here.
Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. It's very much like that one.
Yeah, this is a little bit more smoky. In fact, funnily enough, what's interesting about this one, it gets more smoky and less smoky sometimes. I haven't quite figured out how to work with this one yet. I wouldn't say I'm a big crystal worker. I used to play with crystals a lot more. I have a lot of crystals. I really should work with them a bit more. But there were some parts of my chakras which were a little bit weak and not aligned enough. And sometimes what I will do is I will put citrine, a tumbled citrine, and also a crystal citrine in water and let it soak. And then I would drink that water. So I drink a lot of citrine water because it boosts my solar plexus chakra.
Good idea. I drink crystallized water, but I hadn't thought about citrine. I actually bought a little package of crystals for each chakra. I should put that in my water just to keep all of them balanced and clear.
Yeah, I mean, a really good thing to do is, if there's a certain part of your, if there's something lacking or one of your chakras are lacking, it's really easy just to look up the correlational crystal and then just meditate with it and also put it in water and drink that water. I mean, you can realign your chakras using crystals quite easily.
That's a good idea to put it in the water. I don't think people realize how important the water is.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a total water extremist. When I go to people's houses now, I get worried about what sort of water they'll have because I stayed in a hotel. I went on holiday recently, and they have these beautiful. I think what they do is they fill it up. You know that when you go to a gym or something, they have those big things, and they like in an office, and they bubble up once you've squirted some water out. But they were filling their own hotel bottles of water up with that. And you just after drinking very, very alkaline, clean water for a long time, you can just tell. So I just panic whenever I go somewhere. I always take like 6 bottles of alkaline water with me wherever I go now. And I tried some tap water yesterday for the first time in 2 years. Oh my God, I thought I was going to be sick.
Awful. Yeah, I went on holiday with my son a couple of weeks ago. We popped around some cities around the East Coast. And some of the cities that we stayed at, the water was horrible. And the hotels didn't provide bottled water.
Yeah.
And it's like once you've had really good, pure water, it's almost impossible to drink stuff from the tap.
Oh, it is. There's so much crap in the water that comes out of your tap. Fine to bathe in, but not to drink. And people say, if you boil it, it's fine. Well, a lot of stuff stays in there. It's purified, but you still got a lot of chemicals that the water treatment plants put in there and stuff. And if I do bathe in that stuff, I put up some salts in there and all kind of stuff, because as the body gets more DNA upgrades, your skin is also going to become more of a living, breathing organ. And your skin is going to absorb more around you and breathe as well. A Pleiadian physicality, not all Pleiadians, but a lot of Pleiadians will have a physicality where when they eat a lot of fruit and vegetables and things, very little comes out the other end. So their digestive tract is not full of poo, basically. Mm-hmm. And they excrete a lot of it out through their skin. They almost sweat it out, and they have bodies which are functioning at a perfect economical rate. So they digest and use most of the food that goes through their tract. They still have a stomach and things that they could process meat, but obviously they don't eat meat. But and some of them don't have teeth. They have little. Some Pleiadians have teeth, but some don't. They have like little ridges in their mouth. Mm-hmm. So, but a Pleiadian will have. They can absorb a lot more through the organ of their skin, because all the skin surrounding you is an organ. So as you get more DNA upgrades, you'll be able to absorb more through your skin and out of your skin. So it's also important to, think about what you're bathing in and what chemicals and things you're putting on your skin, shampoos and all that kind of stuff, because the more chemicals that we're using, it's not just what we're putting inside ourselves, but what we're putting on ourselves as well. So I think I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
So, do you know what? London is filthy. When I went away to the country, the air was so clean. But since I got back to London, it makes me sneeze, and that's the problem. The more you rid your body of toxins, chemicals, preservatives, heavy meats, all the rest of it, the much more sensitive you become. So it does come with a trade-off that you have to be careful with. At some point, I will. London's great, but the pollution here. I also know, as your nervous system becomes less. When your nervous system calms down, you can start to taste the pesticides in things, and you can smell the heavy particulates in the air, and you become ultra sensitive to all this stuff. But when the nervous system is very, very, for example, I have some friends who when they take CBD, they get nothing from it because they're so overloaded with preservatives and coffee and nicotine and caffeine that nothing can get in there. They can't feel anything. They're just numb. So I can't remember why I was even talking about all this, but yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is people say to me, oh, well, I didn't feel anything during the Lionsgate, and I didn't feel anything during the great solar flash of 2020, 21 December, and I say, well, probably because you weren't in a vibratory place to be able to perceive it, but also your body and your nervous system were numb because of drugs, recreational drugs, pharmaceuticals, preservatives, whatever you're putting inside your body. So you will be numb to energy unless you can clear yourself and your field and everything else. That's why to get messages through, I practice having a very clean vessel as often as I can. So I can't remember how we got onto this. I'm sorry if I've digressed.
No, it's fine, because we had talked about that before. Here's the thing, Alexander. Whenever I get on camera, I set very clear intentions that what comes through me and through you, whoever I'm speaking with, is what's best for all concerned. So there is no right or wrong with any of it. It's the conversation that probably a lot of people need to hear.
Yeah.
Which is why we're having it.
Yeah, it's a bit like when Laurie Ladd. I don't know whether you or your subscribers watch Laurie Ladd, but sometimes she will put a YouTube video up, and it'll be something that'll just suddenly come through her, and she's like, "Well, I'm saying this for the collective because someone out there needs to hear this." And it's like sometimes I'll be talking to someone, and something will come through me, and suddenly I'll be talking about something that someone or a group of people suddenly need to hear about. And I'm like, why did I just do that? So I think I just have one of those moments.
Yeah. Well, and we're talking about having really what it is about creating a pure vessel in order for more light to come in, because we're all moving into becoming light bodies, correct? Crystalline bodies rather than carbon-based bodies. And this is all part of the 5D consciousness that we are collectively wanting to move into. So in order for us to move into that 5D consciousness and take our body into it with us, we need to essentially purify our body vessel in order for more light to come in and anchor and be activated in our bodies. And all of the chemicals that we're bringing, breathing, that we're eating, that we're putting on our skin are all affecting our body's ability to handle and hold more light. So That's funny. What I'm hearing is that's exactly what it means to lighten up. So
I like it. That's good. That's very good. And
what's interesting is that the weight falls off too.
Yes, it does. It does. I have very little fat on my body. It does. But the body, in a higher vibration, there'll be people who will disagree with this, and they will be triggered by what I'm going to say, and that's all right. But the body cannot function at a high vibratory rate with all of that extra fat and excess fat on the body. It struggles. And also, as you go up in higher vibratory rates, you're going to want much lighter foods, but you're going to want much smaller portions as well. Because the crystalline body doesn't want all of that excess fat. It doesn't work well with fat. That is a carbon-based body. The two don't interact well.
Right.
They don't. So I don't know any really spiritual fat people. I know that's probably really prejudiced. And some of your viewers are like, I used to love Alexander Quinn. I don't like him anymore. Switch off. Boom. Remote controller off.
Well, I know a few, but it's really just because they are so busy doing their work that that their body's just the body isn't working at its optimum potential because they're spending 24/7 doing their soul's work. And I mean, what we know is that a lot of times the body puts on this excess weight, either because the body is looking for protection, or our psychology, people who haven't processed their pain stories, a lot of times are overweight because it's a means of self-protection.
Yep.
So once we start to raise our vibration up enough, we don't feel like we need to protect ourselves as much. We can get the protection we need through spiritual protection, not through having these big bodies to protect. Yep. Right.
Well, so it's the same with the ETs. You don't get huge ETs holding all that extra weight. They're very, very lean. If you look at a Pleiadian, I mean, that's how we're designed to be. We're not designed to have all of that extra weight on us. We're not, because it puts all extra stress on the organs and our heart as well. So we're designed to live hundreds of years, actually, in this physical vessel. Actually, hundreds of years. And you can slow down the aging process. It can be done, but we're meant to be lean, our organs functioning nicely, and we're meant to live hundreds of years.
Right.
So something really important I wanted to say, and it's gone now. So I'm thinking about sneezing again. God, I'm so sorry. I can't remember what I was going to say now. I can't. Where were we?
And we were talking about protection, I think. Did it have something to do with that?
Yeah, it was something I was going to say about diet. Anyway, but it's left me. It's left me. Yeah, all very, very important stuff. And I mean, I see a lot of people going on like keto diets, and they say, no, keto diet is very spiritual. I mean, some people can lose a lot of weight on a keto diet, but there's a lot of bad fats you can still be putting in your body on a keto diet, and all of that fat, again, it's not going to help you with recall and cognitive dissonance and connecting to your eyesight with all that fat floating around in your blood system as well.
What's the animal fat? Yeah. Yeah. Well, and not only that, I don't think a lot of people realize that when they eat animals, they're actually, the saying that we are what we eat, right? That when we eat animals, we are also ingesting any dis-ease that they've also participated in their life. So if they've lived a very stressful life and not eating what is best for them and not experiencing what is best for them, that memory is held in the muscle memory, and it becomes a part of us, which is why if a person is choosing to eat meat, that's why it's so important for the meat to be organic and compassionately raised. Because that any stress that animal experiences also then becomes part of us.
I tell you what, I'm going to say something really controversial. Okay, really controversial. You know why I don't like halal meat? It's because that meat carries the highest fear signature of nearly all the meats out there on the market. So when you digest that meat, you're putting the highest fear signature meat you can put into your system, because they kill it by slitting the throat. So those animals are killed by slitting the throat and all the blood draining out. So the animal dies in fear and terror, and it's a long, drawn-out, slow death. As opposed to if you have to eat, like like organic beef or something, you know, they just put it like a stun gun to the head and it's over straight away. So there are certain meats that will carry a very high fear signature. And when you eat that, like for example, I'll give you an example. I put myself through an experiment 2 months ago. I'm in a dietary wise in a very, very good place. So I had to go to Birmingham, which is in the middle of England, to go and sort my laptop out because the screen failed, and I nearly had a baby because my office is my laptop basically. And I had not eaten a McDonald's in something like 3 years. So I thought to myself, I wonder what it would be like to totally backtrack and have a McDonald's and just see what it feels like. After having a very clean, alkaline, pescatarian diet. So I went in there and I ordered the chips and the chicken nuggets, and I was eating it, and it was all very deep fried and everything. Okay. And I got back home and I had all these dreams that I had eaten all these what are they called? Like worms and things. You know, parasites. Yeah, I dreamt that I had all these parasites in my body, and it was a very disturbing dream. And then the next day, I felt so depressed and fearful after eating this McDonald's, and it completely ruined my energy field. I was totally depressed and totally fearful, and that is what some of these foods can do to you. So when you're on really good food, you don't feel depressed and fearful. So I just wanted to backtrack and just test that it really is true. So I did it to myself, and it was horrible, and it completely lowered my vibration for about, I would say, 2 days. But to have dreams that I was having all these parasites in me and everything, I mean, to go from very clean back to McDonald's. That was my experience, and it was horrible.
Yeah, I've experienced that too, and it actually makes my stomach has a very difficult time digesting that kind of food. Just does. I have to take digestive enzymes because I can't even process it anymore.
Yeah.
And again, it does lower my vibration. And there is, as we're saying, about one, we are what we eat, and if we are ingesting low vibration foods, it's going to have that kind of an impact on our body.
Yeah, and your psychology and your consciousness.
The higher we've raised our consciousness, and the more we've cleared our body of that lower vibration, the more sensitive we are. As you were saying, even with the sneezing, right? The more sensitive we are to that lower vibration food. And if we're listening, our body will make it very clear what it does and doesn't like.
Absolutely. 100%. You know, people ask me all the time, you know, what food should I eat? Should I eat red meat? Should I drink this thing? Should I do that? I say, I used to be, don't do this, don't do that, because it's not spiritual. I don't do that anymore, because I would like to think I have a more sophisticated answer now. You need to eat for your blood type. You need to eat for where you are vibrationally. And you need to eat for what your body needs at that moment in time. And as you just said, the body will always tell you what you do and what you don't need. And there is no rush going into a spiritual ascension diet, because the body will tell you what it needs when you need it. And you will naturally fall away from McDonald's and Coca-Cola and having a steak and stuff like that. You won't need to be told to do it. You will know when it's time, because your body will naturally fall away from it. And people rush into spiritual diets too quickly and then have health problems. So I say, everyone just, you know, the intention is that take your time. You know, it'll take generations for people to stop eating, you know, burgers every weekend and stuff. You know, generations is not all going to happen in this lifetime. It might not even happen all in this lifetime for some people watching this, and that's okay. No judgment.
It took multiple generations to get to this point. You know, when we go back to the 1950s, when the very first fast food restaurant showed up. And before that, very few people ate out. And nobody ate. I mean, fast food was like, woo, the new in thing for the younger generation. But that this now where very few people cook their own food, it took several generations to get to that point.
Yeah.
And so it might take several generations to move away from that. And this is kind of, I think, well, what's interesting, one of the things that was really interesting about 2020 is that so many people started learning how to cook because they've never cooked for themselves. And cooking is like a new in thing. And I think it's great because I think for the first time, people are starting to really understand what goes into their food.
100%. And it's so important to cook. It's very therapeutic and cathartic to cook. Considering you have to eat, twice a day, just to live, it might be helpful to know how to cook. And I want to go back to a point you said earlier on, because you mentioned 2023, and there are some other people who are calling that the 0 point year. I don't know if I have decided fully in my mind what that means yet, but a lot of other people are coming to fruition about 2023 as well. I personally think the duration of the whole period of change, the big massive change, is still going to be centered around the Uranus turn finishing in 2025. But 2023 will definitely be a halfway marker for sure. And you mentioned that earlier on, and I just wanted to come back to that because someone else who was quite advanced was telling me about 0 point being in 2023. So I just wanted to come back to that because that was very interesting. You said that.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that. I just keep getting the impression that 2023 is a very vital year. So we're in the transition phase, right? That transition phase, I think, as you were saying, will be pretty complete by 2025.
I think so. That's what I'm getting.
But 2023 feels like that is like a crux year. It's interesting. I'm seeing right. And it's a year where a lot of the realities will begin to completely separate off. So between now and then, more is going to be exposed and more is going to be shown so that people are then able to make the choice. So what I was being shown about a year and a half ago is that everyone will be given a conscious choice. So right now we don't have conscious choice. Right now, what we have is choice, but the choice is not a conscious choice because most of the information is still being hidden. My understanding is that by 2023, all of the information will be exposed and every person will be able to make a conscious choice. So maybe that's why some people are calling it the 0 point of, okay, you guys have been given all the information. Now you can make a conscious choice which reality you choose. Because right now, the majority of humanity is unconsciously choosing the old world's reality.
Yes, there is truth in that for sure.
Yeah. So if everyone is then given the full spectrum of information to work with, then they can make a conscious choice which reality they want to be in. And after that point, then you'll start to see a complete separation. And my feeling is that by 2025, we'll have two completely different realities going on. Eventually, the old world will fade away because it's not, they use the word sustainable, but even that word doesn't apply because that reality is just not sustainable. And the world we're creating is beyond sustainability. It's actually creating a prosperous new world rather than merely sustenance. So that sustenance, that mere sustenance is not, it's not replenishable. So it will start to fade away.
It will fade away.
Some people will consciously choose it. They will know full well the consequences of making that choice, and they will still choose it.
They will, yeah. And so, some souls have made a very amazing choice to do that deliberately in this lifetime to facilitate others, which is very unconditional.
Mm-hmm.
I have to jump off because I have a client in 4 minutes.
Okay.
Can I say what a joy? It is always a joy talking. I love talking to you because you know what's fascinating about talking to you is we get talking and then I think, where did 3 hours just go? It's always the same. It's always amazing. It's like time vanishes, and it's like I could easily carry on. Anyway, I have to go. Thank you so much for having me today.
Always so good to see you. It's been too long. Well, we need to do this more often, for sure.
I love it. I find it so easy talking to you. I remember one interview we did was like 2.5 hours long, and I looked up. I was like, wow, where did time go? I have got to jump off now.
This time you have some place to be. So it's so good to see you. It won't be nearly so long before we talk again.
Deal.
Have a lovely evening.
Ciao.
And we'll chat soon. Okay. Bye. Well, that was a great and unexpected conversation between Alexander and I. We just never know what's going to come through. So apparently talking about how to raise our vibration within our bodies was a really important conversation for us to have today and for all of you who are watching this. Again, as we both said, this isn't about one, not feeling guilty about what we put in our body and becoming more conscious, again, of what is triggering us so that we can resolve it, any shadows that are showing up so that we can work through them, and recognizing if what we're putting in our body is what is best for us. And our bodies will tell us what they need, and our bodies will make it very clear when something isn't what is best for us. So this conversation, I think, is really, really important for people to understand that moving into this new earth 5D reality that so many of us feel calling to us, we can't bypass our way there. We don't just jump from 3D to 5D and it's all good. There is a process of getting there. It's a mental process, emotional process, physical process, and spiritual process. Mind, body, heart, and spirit. All 4 aspects of the self are required in up-leveling in order for the whole of us to arrive in this state of consciousness that we are all working together as one unified humanity to arriving at. Or rather, what it really is bringing heaven to earth. It's not like we're going someplace else. It's about shifting our own beingness to bring heaven into the earth plane. And so this conversation between Alexander and I seemed to be really important message for us to be having. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been having that conversation. So I hope you appreciate and enjoy what we have both had to say about this. As always, use what works for you and discard the rest, because every one of us is in our own unique path, our own unique journey, and we're all in our own unique process of where we presently are. And when you understand that you take what works and discard what doesn't, then you can move forward in your own unique soul's journey without any judgments or blame or resentment toward any of us as teachers, and then also toward yourself, because any kind of resentment that you hold toward yourself or toward anyone else in humanity actually blocks your own flow and blocks your own vibratory expansion and upwardness. So I wanted to share that with you. Remember to hold your light so high that others can't help but see their own light. Together we will create a free and prosperous world. And as always, until next time, get bold, be fearless, and live free. Mwah.